The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, PhD. It is Sunday, the 24th of August, 2025. Welcome to This Week with Mary Holland, President of Children's Health Defense, and myself, Polly Tommey. Right, let's get on with the first piece of news. ABC News here. Leading paediatrician group recommends COVID vaccine for infants in contrast with RFK Jr. The American Academy of Pediatrics, known as AAP, said that children aged 6 months to 23 months should receive a COVID-19 vaccine, completely in contrast with federal health officials. HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. announced in late May that the CDC would no longer recommend the COVID vaccine for healthy children. They're saying the vaccine can protect against serious illness. We're saying it can and does kill and permanently injure.
We're starting to see, Polly, a much more open war, and we'll cover more stories about this. But, pharma is lining up with its trade groups, American Academy of Pediatrics, American Medical Association, to really take aim at Secretary Kennedy right now and to say, we don't really care what the CDC says anymore. Just listen to us. Take all your vaccines starting at 6 months. Don't leave any out. Take as many as possible. The more, the better. That's basically what's happening.
So the Defender in their government news watch section is Pennsylvania Capital Star reporting here. Heading into the respiratory illness season, states and clinicians are working to encourage pregnant patients to get COVID-19 vaccines, even though the HHS no longer recommends them. The vast majority of medical experts say getting the shot is safe and effective. Pregnant women are at high risk for complications from the illness, including preterm labor and stillbirth. Well, not what we're seeing. We're seeing completely the opposite.
We're
I don't know how they get away with that.
We just funded a lawsuit about a pregnancy unit, a maternity ward in a hospital where the level of stillbirths was absolutely unprecedented with moms who were taking the COVID shot. So, this is really like a polar opposite kind of recommendation, and it's coming to a head, which in some ways, Polly, is a good thing.
Well, Secretary Kennedy on X, he tweeted out, this is a screenshot from American Academy of Pediatrics webpage, thanking the organization's top corporate donors. These 4 companies make virtually every vaccine on the CDC recommended childhood vaccine schedule. There's Merck, Pfizer, Moderna, and Sanofi. So what he's saying is, I would say, be careful of the AAP. They are completely compromised.
Well, yes, and I think this is a message to lawyers. He's saying perhaps this is a pay-to-play scheme to promote commercial ambitions of AAP's big pharma benefactors. And he says these recommendations from AAP, they should make sure they tell the doctors and hospitals that there will be no liability shield if it's not covered by a federal recommendation. So he's really saying to AAP, be very careful here. And he's basically telling lawyers, you can be suing these people for the injuries that may happen because they're no longer going to be covered by this liability shield that the federal recommendations from ACIP provide. So we are entering a whole new landscape, Polly. This is a big deal, and that's a very powerful for Bobby Kennedy to call this a pay-to-play scheme. He's basically accusing AAP and Big Pharma of collaborating together in a racketeering scheme. So this is major. It's not one event, but we're starting to see a lot happening in this space.
AAP received tens of millions in federal funding to push vaccines and combat misinformation. The American Academy of Pediatrics also used taxpayer-funded grants to streamline pandemic preparedness, according to public records. The organization recently sued U.S. Health Secretary RFK Jr. over COVID-19 vaccine recommendations and is working to end religious exemptions for childhood vaccinations. It's a really good article.
It's an excellent article, again, just showing AAP received almost $35 million from the federal government, most of it going to attack people like us. It's just showing that they are the long arm of the pharmaceutical industry. They're not about kids, they're about industry.
CDC hit with lawsuit over failure to test cumulative effect of 72-dose childhood vaccine schedule. This is Dr. Paul Thomas, and Dr. Kenneth P. Stroller and Stamp Health Freedom are suing the CDC, alleging the agency's failure to test the cumulative effect of its vaccine recommendations for children violates federal law and children's constitutional rights. So 2 doctors who lost their medical licenses because they questioned the CDC's vaccine recommendations for children.
Yes, this lawsuit is being brought by attorney Rick Jaffe, whom we have worked with consistently for many years. Children's Health Defense is not funding this lawsuit. We are not a party to this lawsuit, but we certainly think that this is an extremely valuable effort. Basically, it's suggesting, as we believe, that this is a continuing public health outrage because the whole schedule has never been properly tested. And what the lawsuit is asking is for all of the shots, because they haven't been properly tested, to be moved to what's called shared decision making. In other words, they can't be made compulsory by the state. If they were moved to category B of the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, it would be up to the individual family and the individual doctor. And the complaint points out, Polly, that the Institute of Medicine, now called the National Academy of Medicine, has been telling the CDC since 2002, over 20 years ago, to study the safety of the whole schedule. And so the complaint alleges that CDC has been engaged in deliberate ignorance of not studying the whole schedule. And that since COVID-19, many more people are aware of the problems. It also alleges that this is a violation of Fifth Amendment rights of children and parents, of their constitutional rights on many different levels. I think it's a really interesting lawsuit, Thomas versus Menares, and we will, of course, be following this.
Okay, MedPage today, no new evidence to support HHS vaccine changes, Shadow Group says. The Vaccine Integrity Project's massive evidence review finds no new safety signals. During a live stream meeting, members of the project presented evidence for reviews for vaccination against 3 respiratory viruses in 3 specific populations: pregnant women, children, and those immunocompromised. There were no new safety concerns with the COVID or the flu shots, and earlier concerns about preterm birth with the RSV vaccines were just allayed. And no increased risk of preterm birth for vaccinated women. So that's your We Can't Stop Lying article of the week.
Yeah, those are just lies. These are well-known apologists for vaccines. Michael Osterholm is one. These people are just, in my view, personally, these are salesmen for Big Pharma. And they lie.
Yeah, sadly. Okay, Suzanne Burdick in The Defender. Leaked MAHA report goes strong on vaccines and soft on pesticides. The leaked draft outlines new priorities on vaccine safety, medical freedom, and wireless radiation studies, but its failure to call for pesticide bans drew criticism from food and environmental groups. Why do you think that they're going soft on pesticides? It's so important.
Well, this isn't the final report, Polly. The final report isn't out yet, so we don't really know what the final report will say. But listen, industry lobbyists are powerful. Industry gives money to people in government. Backers matter. And the pesticide manufacturers, which is essentially big ag, big chemical, they give a lot of money to candidates. And so this is a political thing. Again, this is money versus the people. It is disappointing. It's very disappointing. What's most problematic here, Polly, is that there's a bill right now in Congress that would give liability protection to the pesticide manufacturers, much like the 1986 Act in the big pharma vaccine space. And it would allow 57,000 new chemicals not to be tested and labeled according to their hazardousness. And that's obviously incredibly bad. We have suffered these liability protection shields that Congress passed with big pharma, and we don't need any more. So we at Children's Health Defense are definitely siding with an amendment that Senator Cory Booker has put in to amend this bill so that it would not have this kind of liability protection for pesticide manufacturers.
In The Defender, the CDC plan to review Hep B vaccine for babies sends mainstream media into a tailspin. MedPage joined a chorus of mainstream media publications touting the safety and necessity of the Hep B vaccine in the face of the CDC Advisory Committee's announcement that it would review its recommendation to give the shot to all newborn babies. In the US, the IV drug users are the highest risk of the disease, public agencies say. Well, maybe they are, but newborn babies shouldn't come into that at all. It's ridiculous, isn't it, Mary?
It's totally ridiculous. And I was actually really pleased that Brenda Belletti, the author here, quoted an article that I wrote many years ago about what I think is an unconstitutional mandate of a Hep B vaccine. But it points out that back in the early 80s, CDC said it doesn't affect very many people. There's no basis for any kind of mandate. We can find the moms who are Hep B positive. We can prevent it from being transmitted to the kids. It's actually, this article points out, there's 1,000 babies out of a 4 million baby cohort in any given year who are at risk of contracting Hep B from their mothers. But after the 1986 Act was passed with this liability shield, CDC, on behalf of pharma, completely changed its tune and said, oh no, this is a terrible, dangerous disease, and we've got to give this to every baby that's born, which is 4 million babies. And so immediately it was $1 billion, Polly. So it's a really good article. It's another really good article. I'm excited that Martin Kulldorff, a co-chair of the new ACIP, is calling for a review of the Hep B vaccine. Incomprehensible, unjustifiable medical intervention on the day of birth.
And the death and injury from those Hep B shots.
Oh, deaths. Polly, you and I both know plenty of parents whose baby died after the Hep B.
Michael Nevadakis in The Defender, the more doses you get, the sooner you're likely to die. This is a Japanese data suggesting COVID vaccines led to a surge in excess deaths. So people who received the COVID-19 vaccines had a significantly higher risk of death in their first year after vaccination compared to the unvaccinated. Again, according to an analysis of a Japanese database of 18 million people. This should be headline news.
So this came out a couple of weeks ago. So the only issue with this, it's not yet peer reviewed. I think this is a preprint, but it's basically saying that people who were vaccinated are dying more commonly than people who were not vaccinated by up to 4.5 times. The peak is between like 90 and 120 days after you got the last dose. The more doses you get, the sooner you are more likely to die. The people in this article that are cited, like Jessica Rose and others, say that, the lipid nanoparticles, the spike proteins, absolutely could be causal factors for why this is. Our scientist, Karl Jablanowski, says this should tank the mRNA platform worldwide. Albert Benavides, who has created this VAERS Aware website, says that this data from Japan is very consistent with VAERS data. And John Campbell, who's just done a video on this on YouTube, and there's a link to it, says it's just incomprehensible that these are still being recommended and that regulators sooner or later are going to have to answer for this. And Carl correctly says any medical intervention like this, you should assume that it's harmful unless it's proven otherwise. I mean, that isn't what happened. And I think Debbie Lerman and Sasha Latipova and Catherine Watt have been very good to continually point out to us these medical interventions, these COVID shots, were not put out under Health and Human Services. They were really put out under the Department of Defense. These are medical countermeasures under the PrEP Act, which was created for chemical, biological, nuclear, and radiation events. These are military countermeasures. These are not medicines by law. And so we have not had a real COVID reckoning, Polly. It's something I'm really thinking hard about. How are we going to get there? I asked Senator Johnson this past week on an up-close event that we do, is there going to be a COVID reckoning? Where will it be? Will it be in Congress? And he wasn't very hopeful that it would be in Congress. And so I think we really have to look at this because these products are still promoting death in people.
Yeah. And Ron Johnson very much on his own fighting this.
Oh,
standing
very
up.
much so. Very much so.
This is an article by Ray Flores and Suzanne Burdick. Over 1.5 million people who reported COVID vaccine injuries shut out from applying for compensation. The little-known federal program that provides compensation for injuries or death related to COVID-19 vaccines fails to accept applications from people who suffer the most common injuries. Of those who can submit a claim, the odds are still slim that they could be compensated or sufficiently or even at all.
This is another great article, and kudos to Attorney Ray Flores for really focusing on this issue. So the Countermeasures Injury Compensation Program only covers death or serious physical injury, which is very limited. It has to be life-threatening. It has to threaten a permanent health impairment. This CICP, it doesn't even rise, Polly, to the level of a kangaroo court because it's not a court at all. You just submit papers. And so far, there have been over 13,000 claims. 0.3% have been adjudicated with an average median payment of a little over $4,000. It describes, it quotes here, Dr. Joel Walskog, one of the founders of React 19. He submitted a claim. He became basically paralyzed. He had catastrophic injuries. He could no longer work as an orthopedist. It took the CICP 18 months to deny his application for funding because of his COVID-19 injury. And then he appealed it, and it took 14 months for them to deny his to not deny it again. There are several lawsuits challenging the PrEP Act, including one that Children's Health Defense has funded that Ray Flores has brought. Again, we have not had a full reckoning for the disaster that COVID was in every way. But this CICP is completely inadequate, and we should not have these kind of blanket liability shields that basically decimate the Constitution. I mean, that's really what happened. There was no access. There is no access to courts, virtually no access to courts for catastrophic injuries and deaths. It's just wrong.
Right this wrong. GRACE Act would strip federal funding from schools that ban religious exemptions. The Guaranteeing Religious Accommodation in Childhood Education Act, all known as the GRACE Act, was drafted by Greg Stube. Sources told Children's Health Defense, which supports the proposed legislation that Stube will introduce the bill this month.
Yes, we, Children's Health Defense, are supporting this congressional bill from Representative Stube, who's based in Florida. It is a matter of conscience, faith, and fundamental dignity for every family. Representative Stube is looking for other original co-sponsors right now. We've just put out an action alert that you can find on our website under advocacy. Please reach out to your representative, see if they might want to be a co-sponsor for guaranteeing that a state, to get federal educational funding, has to have a religious exemption. If the state doesn't want the money from the federal government for education, fine, no problem. But the federal government has an obligation to uphold the First Amendment, which requires free exercise of religion. So I'm excited about it. The support for religious exemptions, according to a national poll, has doubled over the last 6 years since COVID started. So I am very hopeful about this bill.
Texas Attorney General sues Eli Lilly for bribing doctors to prescribe high-profit drugs. This is Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. The drugs include the company's most profitable drugs, including the GLP-1, the weight loss medications, Mounjaro and Zepbound. Many of the prescriptions were covered by Texas Medicaid, resulting in millions of dollars in claims made at taxpayers' expense, the suit alleges. So many people on that weight loss medication with so many side effects as well. So
last week, Polly, you'll remember we talked about the teeth decay from using Ozempic, and that's sort of a new, that was an article from Mercola. The side effects of these GLP-1 injections are just astounding. And I'm sure we've just seen the beginning of this. But what's great about this lawsuit by Attorney General Ken Paxton of Texas, who's now running for Senate in Texas, is he's really calling these financial incentives to the doctors, bribery. He's calling them a kickback scheme. And apparently, Eli Lilly was offering free nurses and support for getting reimbursement, and that they were basically, Eli Lilly was charging this to Medicaid. Their first quarter profits were $10 billion. So this is really fantastic that Texas, a very key state in the country, is really going up against Big Pharma, really going after them. It's really exciting.
Good stuff. Okay, this is in the Children's Health News Watch in the Defender. State officials declare West Texas measles outbreak is over. They announced it's been more than 42 days since West Texas counties reported a new measles case. There were 2 fatalities in school-aged children. No, there was not. They're still printing. Those 2 girls in Gaines County, Texas, died from measles. They did not. We at Children's Health Defense can categorically tell you that they did not, but they still put it out, Mary. And also, don't forget, at our conference, Dr. Ben Edwards from Gaines County is going to be at the conference, and I know a lot of you want to meet him. I mean, he is literally, Mary, my hero of the year for what he did, having seen it firsthand. This is how doctors should be, and he's going to be at the conference. I'm really excited.
Yeah, very exciting. He's going to be, and we'll have a panel, Polly, right, that you'll be on, and Dr. Ben Edwards and others about that whole West Texas measles episode.
Yeah, and maybe more people coming from Gaines County. We're waiting for confirmation on that. So it's very exciting. Dr. Joseph McCullough in the Defender plea to RFK Jr. to end the use of mercury-laden silver fillings on low-income dental patients. Despite being called silver fillings, dental amalgam is actually 50% mercury, a toxic heavy metal that can reach the brain, the kidneys, and the breast milk. It's still used on service members, Native Americans, institutionalized individuals, and low-income families without choice. I completely agree with Dr. McCullough on that, absolutely. And also to use it on our service members and people who are in institutions, you know, like autism and stuff. I know what's happening to them. It's really horrific. It's abusive.
Yeah, it is. So a group called Consumers for Dental Choice have been advocating to have those people have more choice. Interestingly, there's a meeting in November under the Global Minamata Convention on Mercury, and there is this group, Consumers for Dental Choice, is working towards a worldwide phase out of any mercury in dental care. And when you think of it, Polly, if you're putting fillings right next to somebody, you know, in somebody's mouth, which is right next to their brain, I'm sure that some of the neurological issues that we see do relate to mercury amalgams. I don't think there's any question.
Suzanne Burdick, people need to wake up. Babies in homes with high levels of wireless radiation have triple the risk of developmental delays. This study of 105 babies in India showed that those who lived in homes with high and medium levels of wireless radiation, including Wi-Fi routers, cell phones, nearby cell towers, exhibited on average worse fine motor skills, communication and problem-solving skills than babies in homes with lower levels of wireless radiation. We are going to be doing a segment on that coming up soon on CHD TV with mothers-to-be. We'll be addressing that.
This is a really small study, Polly, and apparently the high exposure levels that they're talking about were about 32 milliwatts per square meter, which according to an expert that they cite in this article is a very high level. But the building biologists say that anything over 1 milliwatt is excessive. You don't want that. The level set by the Federal Communications Commission of the United States says that you can have up to 10,000 milliwatts per square meter, which is our own Farha Hussein says that that is just a ridiculous level. So, you know, we really have a problem here, and that's why Children's Health Defense is focusing on electromagnetic radiation, because it is this growing, pervasive threat worldwide that, much like the vaccines, there's essentially liability protection, and we don't really know what the effects are. So it's a big issue that we're trying to get to the bottom of. We're going to have some fantastic electromagnetic radiation speakers at our conference in November. I'm really excited about that, including Dr. Deborah Davis, who heads the Environmental Health Trust. And she's been working in this EMR field for decades.
Very exciting. So remember the conference in Austin, Texas, November the 7th to the 9th. And we really look forward to seeing so many of you. The link is going to be put in the show notes. So if you can come, please come. We're very excited to meet you all. But yes, exciting. And people, more speakers being added to that list. I keep checking back and seeing that as well. But we're going to go to our geoengineering now, and then we're going to go to our story of the day. And I will see you tomorrow. Good morning, CHD. We're going to have Carl from our science department on to talk about something very important. Pray big, stand firm, never settle. And Mary and I'll see you soon.
Thanks, Polly. Bye, everybody.
The beaches along the East Coast are taking a beating as Hurricane Erin spins about 200 miles from the North Carolina shore. Growing waves threatening homes and businesses, some already damaged by the overwash.
These are houses that no longer have a protective dune in front of them. They're very vulnerable to the waves, to the high surf.
North Carolina's Outer Banks bearing the brunt of Erin's wrath. Highways submerged as crews raced to reinforce the protective dunes. Parts of Highway 12, the main road that runs the length of the barrier islands, closed overnight, and it could stay that way for days. North Carolina's governor pre-positioning swiftwater rescue teams and National Guard troops, urging people to stay away from flooded roads.
Don't do it. You do not know how deep the water is or how fast it is running.
As hurricanes move north, they expand. And Erin's tropical storm force wind field is huge, extending 320 miles outside the center. Like a bulldozer shoving water at the coast, it's whipping up powerful rip currents. Many beaches shut down. Officials on the New Jersey shore warning people to not only stay out of the water, but off the beach entirely.
You can get a rogue set of waves coming in, and if you're on the beach, comes in, or take your feet right out from under you and pull you right out.
Climate change is increasing the risk of rapidly intensifying storms. Hurricane Erin is the latest example. What's your thought about that, Dane?
We hear that term a lot now, rapid intensification with the cyclonic rotations. And certainly the planet is in meltdown. There's no question about that. Countless human causes are a part of this equation. But what's the cause? What's the single biggest piece of the puzzle that is completely omitted by all matrix media sources? And that is climate engineering, geoengineering, aka weather warfare. Governments all over the world colluding and cooperating on this massive climate engineering Manhattan project. And yet matrix media pretending that we're not seeing what we're actually seeing in our skies. The whole of academia pretending the same, just like they pretended safe and effective, which was anything but. So again, we have a very low level of human morality in this equation from any direction. So in regard to the climate rapid intensification, we know that these patented processes of hurricane modification have existed for nearly a century. U.S.'s first intervention with hurricanes was in 1947, Project Cirrus. And with very little input, they had a massive effect on that storm, changed direction. How far have they come since, now that we have massive frequency transmission manipulation on top of the particulate dispersions? So with the rapid intensification, what we see is that in general, and Erin is being dealt with a little bit differently than some of the previous storms in recent years, but we see the storms somewhat suppressed until they reach a proximity very close to landfall, at which time they let them spin up. As far as the spawning of those storms, Mary, the oceans are scaldingly hot. We had temperatures in Florida a year and a half ago of 102 degrees. Those are sea surface temperatures. That's the same temperature Jacuzzi recommends for their hot tub. Killed everything, coral reefs. So again, nature can spawn these storms and is readily, but the weather makers have the technology and have had for a very long time to suppress the strength of those rotations through atmospheric pressure zone manipulation. We see that happening until they're close enough to land to be manipulated by land-based frequency transmission networks like the NexRad network. Helene was a prime example of that. Hurricane Harvey was a prime example. So thus we see the rapid intensification term a lot. And Mary, did you happen to see what Hurricane Otis did in Acapulco about 2 years ago?
No, tell us about that.
Hurricane Otis killed more than 24 people when it plowed into Acapulco last week, many of whom learned too late just how big that storm would be.
Yeah, so how did a tropical storm turn into a Category 5 hurricane so quickly? Well, CBS News correspondent Tom Hansen says it's all in the water.
Hurricane Otis stunned scientists, with wind speeds jumping by 115 miles per hour to 165 in a single day, slamming into Acapulco. The National Hurricane Center called it a nightmare scenario, a nightmare caused by rapid intensification. That's when a storm's sustained winds increase by at least 35 miles per hour in a day or less.
That's a very prime example of rapid intensification. So you had a tropical depression, tropical storm that was not even considered a threat, that went from, again, a tropical storm status to the strongest Category 5 hurricane to ever hit that part of the world in less than 24 hours, literally laid waste to Acapulco. If you saw the post-storm photos, it looked like a post-apocalyptic movie scene. That was not natural hurricane behavior, and it caught the entire meteorological community completely flat-footed, had no idea that a storm could even do this. So again, and I'll leave it with this, Mary, when we have film footage of President Lyndon Johnson all the way back in 1962. You've seen this, your listeners have, stating we had the power to control then. What can we do now?
It lays the predicate and the foundation for the development of a weather satellite that will permit man to determine the world's cloud layer and ultimately to control the weather. And he who controls the weather will control the world.
You've said that governments around the world are employing this weather warfare. Do you have any sense, Dane, of how the governments coordinate or don't coordinate this use of weather modification?
Yes, we do. In fact, we have U.S. Senate documents, 800 pages long, that specifically describes the intergovernmental cooperation between, quote, otherwise adversarial nations on these programs because of the cross-border ramifications. You can't just climate engineer over your own country. We have historical data proving Soviet climate engineering scientists were here touring U.S. facilities in the 60s, in the height of the Cold War. Soviet scientists were touring our facilities. Our scientists were there touring their facilities. Again, we're not speculating on this in any way, shape, or form. So again, we have one more very key piece to the puzzle. We have an interview with an insider scientist in these programs from 2003 who was found suicided 2 weeks after that interview. It's posted at geoengineeringwatch.org, the full transcript, and so much technical data is presented in that interview of exactly how the intergovernmental cooperation works, exactly how the materials distribution works. It is incredibly detailed, far too much to be anything less than authentic. So again, it has to be remembered that global power structures, for their own purposes, regardless of their surface conflicts, have their own reasons for wanting to manipulate the weather, including that tool as a manipulative form of controlling their own populations as well. That's what's happening here.
I would love for us to put the links to that interview, Dane, and that Senate report here in the show. I think that would be very interesting to our readers.
Okay, yes, we're live. Okay. Right, tell everyone your name.
I'm David Rasnick.
And what are your qualifications?
I have a PhD in chemistry, and I've worked in the pharmaceutical biotech industry for 20 years. And I've worked since then over 20 years in cancer research. And I was one of the people that helped with Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s book, The Real Anthony Fauci. And I follow you guys all over the place, and I love you all.
Well, thank you for what you do. So what did you do in the pharmaceutical industry?
I worked on arthritis, emphysema, parasites, cancer, and AIDS. And I have a website, by the way, davidrasnick.com. It's got 40 years worth of information on there, and things a lot of people can download, whatever, and find out all that stuff. But I've worked constantly on, continuously on cancer since 1996, when I joined up with Professor Peter Duesberg at University of California at Berkeley. And we've written a great deal on AIDS and also on our cancer research. And I've published a book, this book for cancer researchers.
The chromosomal imbalance theory of cancer.
Right, and you can download the whole thing from my website, PDF, and it's actually easier to use. You can search it for terms, for example, like SV40, that's popular now with the turbo cancer stuff, or anything else in there. And so I recommend don't spend a huge amount of money to buy the book. Download it for free. I should hold it still, I guess. Download it for free from my website. And turbo cancer, which I, as a cancer researcher, never heard of before, last year or whatever, and like everybody else, what's this turbo cancer? Turbo cancer kind of implies very, very fast development and progression, and indeed that's what's going on, and I'm convinced there is such a thing as turbo cancer. Let me define turbo cancer. Normal cancers prior to a couple of years ago, for as long as we've known about cancers, are slow. It takes to develop. Blood cancers, typically a few years for blood cancers, and decades for solid tumors like colon cancer, breast cancer, and things like that. So when I started hearing about these turbo cancers, what are they talking about? Cancers develop very slowly. And sure enough, now I'm convinced. I've looked it up, and there's a number of researchers. Where should I hold this?
You just talk to me.
Okay, just talk to you.
Yeah,
that Dr. Ryan Cole, he has been talking about the COVID vax causes turbo. He's insistent that it does, and I think he's right. I agree with him. Cancers by Dr. Harvey Risch, he's an epidemiologist, and Dr. Frank Yap and others, and I'll be happy to provide that information if people want to contact me. And rapidly developing cancers are not new, but the only place they ever existed historically prior to a couple of years ago were in laboratory animals, where the quickest sort of generation of cancer cells, though, is not even in animals, it's in cell culture, where you take cells and then you culture them in like in a petri dish or something, and they either spontaneously can transform, that's what the word, turning from normal cells into cancer cells, but typically what are used are carcinogens or some viruses. For example, SV40 for simian virus 40, which has been used, Lord, since the 50s, I guess it was. And that was a way to generate really rapid cancer and progression of cancer cells in the laboratory. And then they went on to do the same thing, but in animals, like mice, and preferably what's called the nude mice, or the immune deficient animals. Where, by the way, that's about the only way that you can really generate or have viruses cause cancer in an animal is if they're immune compromised in some way or deficient. For example, the nude mice. It's very difficult to generate cancers in normal, certainly humans, instantly or rapidly. That's been going up over the decades. The increased number of cancers in the world, principally in the developed world, because of carcinogens. The prevalence of carcinogens have gone up drastically since the Industrial Revolution, and it's accelerating now. So we have, I think, we have cancer, heart attack. Heart attacks are the #1 cause of death in the United States. Cancer is #2, and medical interventions is #3 cause of death in the United States. And these things are going up and accelerating. Now that's the incidence is going up, but the turbo cancer thing, which is new, is that instead of taking decades for the cancers to develop all the way from nowhere to stage 3 and stage 4, which are lethal cancers, we're seeing this happen now in the order of months. And in young people, like in their 20s, and they get really, when it develops, they get late stage cancer and they're dead really, really quickly. That is new. The only time we have ever seen this rapid or so-called turbo, that's what they call it now, we just call it accelerated cancer in the animals or things, because they were immune deficient by design. Now what we're doing, I think the simplest, best explanation, and I'm convinced the true explanation of what's behind turbo cancer, is that these injections, these nucleoside, these mRNA and DNA vaccines, these genetic injections, they're not vaccines, these genetic injections are devastating the immune system. We know that's happening already, but now we're seeing a consequence of that devastated immune system. It's an acceleration of tumors that were probably already in you to begin with, were benign, probably go away on their own. You'd never know you had it. But once your immune system is really depressed, now these things can develop rapidly. And we know that in animals. We've caused it in animals, for decades. I personally didn't. I didn't work with the poor things. I was just in a regular laboratory as a chemist. But so now we're doing it in people. We're basically doing to human beings what we did to laboratory animals. We're destroying their immune systems to the point where they can't resist the cancer, and the cancer cells are now growing like they are in cell culture. They don't have anything impeding their ability to proliferate. And that in a nutshell is what turbocancer is. Now, I'm not finished. I'm just in the midst of my investigation of turbocancer because it hadn't been around long enough, and I want to get as much information that I can so that when I talk to other scientists, we can really drill down and answer each other's questions in an intelligent way. So I'll let you ask some questions.
Well, yeah, I just want to know, have we ever done a study, vax-unvaxxed, of cancer? So, because as I've travelled around over since 2016 on this bus and another,
right,
I can't find cancer in the vaccine-free yet.
Yes, in fact, there's Danny Rancourt in, I think he's in Canada. Danny, forgive me if I got you wrong where you live, but he's doing some extraordinary studies on cancers all over the world and of different types, and he's looking, and I talked to him just, I guess it was yesterday, or a couple of days ago, and he's going to be doing the turbocancer, the same analysis, injected, non-injected, like he's done with all these other sorts of things. But the thing of it is that you don't even need to do that, but it needs to be done, but because we want to make it as solid as possible. The thing is that there is no history. I'm a cancer researcher, I've been doing this, God, for decades, and I don't know of anybody else who's ever seen this phenomenon in humanity before, So the connection between these mass injections, which we know they're destroying the immune system, and the immune system is one of the principal sources of protection of cancers, especially in creatures that live long, like humans and Galapagos tortoises and things like that. The mice and things, they don't live very long, and they can get spontaneous cancers, but they typically die before that happens because they have such a short life. So I could talk on and on.
Well,
and
no,
on
good,
about this
because
stuff.
we have a little bit of time, even though we're running about an hour late,
Okay.
but never mind.
Okay.
So here's another question for you. So there's a lot of rare blood cancer around at the moment that we didn't really hear about. A lot of people with rare blood cancer, including my mother. So they have an AstraZeneca or Johnson & Johnson, not just mRNA. Everybody's obsessed with mRNA, but we're seeing injury in non-mRNA shots. So the doctors are all saying to these people with rare blood cancer, you had it anyway, so it's nothing to do with the shot. So did they have it anyway? I know you may not be able to answer this.
I know the point you're making.
Yeah, did they have
Yes.
it anyway and the shot just made it worse, or was there nothing there and the shot, what was the deal there?
Okay, I think there's two things. I actually prepared to talk about this. I'm glad you asked the question. Typically, we all have cancers in us, cancer cells. Cosmic radiation, the carcinogens that we're constantly exposed to, they generate nascent cancer cells, and they can actually develop to a point, but they're dormant. Almost all of them are dormant, and they tend to die. Cancer cells are very wimpy. They cannot compete effectively with normal healthy tissues and organs. Almost always go away anyway. Your immune system, I should say this, I'm talking too fast to understand. The cancer cells, one thing they all have in common, they have an abnormally high number of chromosomes that normal cells do not. Normal cells, humans, we have 46 chromosomes. Cancer cells typically have between 60 and 90 chromosomes, and they're always changing. And these extra chromosomes make these cells abnormal, and they don't function properly, and they want to die spontaneously, which they do frequently. And if they don't, our immune system recognizes them as abnormal. The macrophages, the dendritic cells, our innate immune system, and they just eliminate them like they do any damaged cell in the body from any reason. And cancer cells are damaged cells from the immune system's point of view, and they get eliminated. Now, the thing that when I first heard about this turbo cancer is a lot of people think, oh, it causes cancer. I'm convinced they can cause cancer, But if you let them progress a while, if that cancer was not there initially. But what I think is, my first impression was, reaction was, is that these dormant cancer cells that we have in us now are freed from the control of our innate immune system, and now they can proliferate, just like they're in cell culture in the laboratory. And then they can go, they're not restrained by our normal healthy body and these immune system. That's what I think is primarily what's going on. And when you're talking about blood cancers or there's all kinds of cancers that are popping up now that are spontaneous.
In children and babies even.
20 years old, and lethal. When they show up, they're like grade 3, grade 4 cancer, you know.
So could the mother who's vaccinating not just against COVID, but also, I mean, mothers have like 4 or 5 shots now when they're pregnant,
right,
including Rogam as well.
Right.
Now, so if a baby is born, and we're hearing stories of 2, 3, 4-month-old babies now being diagnosed with eye cancer and all kinds of crazy stuff, could there be a correlation there between the pregnancy with shots? I mean,
Laura, like I say, I've got a lot more digging to do on this stuff.
Yes, you do.
The information is coming. The horrors are coming faster than we can look into them. I think we'll have very explicit answers to those questions. The thing is the magnitude of the numbers is escalating. One thing you can't dispute is the fact that this thing now is so prevalent. The only thing that you can correlate it with is what's happened over the past 2 or 3 years of such magnitude, you know, and that's basically probably all these shots may do this to some extent or another, but not like the massive billions of doses of these nucleic acid or these genetic, the mRNA and the DNA vaccines that they're using. I mean, the sheer scale. Think of it, cancers in general are escalating primarily because of the increased prevalence of carcinogens. Chronic exposure to carcinogens of all kinds have been going up over the decades. That's why cancers of all types have been going up all over the decades. But the rates of development people haven't really changed. What really changed with this turbo cancer is now we're seeing it's breaking loose from the decades that we know that take colon cancer and breast cancer, for example, pop up, and these other things. Now when they pop up in your 20s, you know, or your 30s, or you're in the womb, or wherever, you know, and at late stages. That's what's new. And what else is new is the massive global destruction of the immune system with these injections.
So, as a cancer specialist, which I think you are, you may not be able to answer this, but what would you do to prevent yourself from getting cancer? People say, oh, don't eat sugar, you'll feed the cancer cells.
Don't get the injections.
Right.
That's number one, because that's where the turbo's coming from. Mm-hmm. The other thing is we have to reduce our chronic exposure to carcinogens. I mean, everybody's known
Name
that
some
for
carcinogens. Name those things. Name some of the things that you're thinking.
Oh, Lord, there are hundreds or thousands.
Or just give us like 5.
Okay, well, drugs, pharmaceutical drugs, they're carcinogenic, many of them. The drugs to treat cancers are carcinogenic. X-ray, the mammograms are carcinogenic that people get. Those are all known carcinogens. The metals that are in the environment, some of them are much higher potent carcinogens than others. All those organic molecules from the oil petroleum industry, if you don't deal with it properly, those things are carcinogenic. I mean, the list of carcinogens are huge. The thing is the prevalence that we're exposed to, though. It just keeps going up. We're very, as a species, humans and other we're very able to take care of low doses of cancer cells. Our body wipes them out, you never even know it. The problem is, it's like cigarette smoking. You know, the stuff, the tar and everything in the cigarettes. You know, you get that with a chronic dose of the cigarette smoke, you know, you're being exposed to carcinogens. Now, the vast majority of lung cancer and throat cancers and things of that nature were people that smoked for decades, all right? 2 decades or so of cigarettes. But the vast majority of people that smoke don't get either. They might get emphysema or something like that. So that shows you that even though a huge population of people that smoke cigarettes, only a small fraction of them actually develop these cancers. But those cancers are almost totally due to those carcinogens of cigarettes and things. That's true of all the different types of carcinogens, the ones you're exposed to. Some of the early days when they had the chimney sweeps, the little kids that they put down for other people through the chimney, and have all those tars and carcinogens that are in those chimneys. You know, the kids would get exposed to this and other people would, and they would come down with cancer. This was one of the earliest correlations between carcinogens and cancer when they had these chimney sweeps coming up with these cancers. And all cancers are caused by carcinogens. What is a carcinogen? Carcinogens are anything that unbalance the chromosomes in the cells, and that damages cells, and almost always those cells die spontaneously and they go away, and you're all right. And if they don't, your immune system recognizes them as damaged and it eliminates them and gets rid of it. So there's two things we have to do to really reduce cancers. One, immediately people have to stop taking these injections, because they truly are causing turbo cancer, all right? The second thing we have to do is reduce our chronic exposure to carcinogens. Now that's not going to be so easy to do, because that's going to take a huge amount of effort. But as individuals, we can stop taking the injections. But in terms of getting rid of the exposure to other carcinogens in the environment, that's going to take a lot more effort.
So I presume as an expert in all of this, how do you live? What's a day in the life like for you? I want to copy you. Because you know what you're doing.
I don't go to doctors. I don't take injections. I'm just an ornery individualist.
And food?
Oh yeah, food. Yeah, we eat very, very well. Organic stuff. I'm the cook.
So you cook from scratch. These things are important. People need to know this, because.
I mean, really, it's like I say, live like your grandmother did, like my grandmother did. I'm a lot older than you guys, but you know, they had pretty healthy lives. You know, if you stayed away, you had good diets, home. We even have a garden, a nice big garden, and things like that. Live the way human beings have lived for generations, for centuries. You know, as long as they had enough food, enough clean water, and things like that. That's what you do. I mean, our species wouldn't have been around for, I don't know, 500,000 years or whatever. I don't know how long we've been around, without physicians, without hospitals. You know, we came a long way, and now all of a sudden, all of our fancy technology and our healthcare systems are killing us.
Okay, so here's a question. I don't know if you want to answer this or not. So hypothetically, if you had cancer, would you have chemo?
No, absolutely not. Zero. Chemotherapy is carcinogenic. Let me tell you something. I've written a book. I already showed you this.
Yeah, and we're going to get your book.
You can get there's studies that were done in the United States and in Britain. Oh, I don't know, 10, 15 years, 20 years ago. I forget what it was, where they had surveys of oncologists and I guess cancer surgeons. Like, it was oncologists mostly, I think it was, and they asked them, would they take the chemotherapy or the treatments that they administer to strangers, or allow a family member. Something like from 75 to 85% of the oncologists said they would not take it, would not allow a family member to take it, because they know what it does. Everybody who I've ever talked to about who had chemo or these radiations, everyone I've talked to regrets that they did it.
They're dead.
Yeah, you know, the ones that were still alive.
Right.
You know, regret, you know, that they did it. And doctors see this. That's why they won't do it, because they see it with their own eyes.
So chemotherapy is potentially one of the biggest lies of medical history ever, along with vaccinations.
It does. It's a horror. I mean, I can confirm that the third leading cause of death is medical intervention. You know, I have references to it.
Show us a book again.
Terry wants me to talk about how to deal. Everybody, usually when I first tell them I'm a cancer researcher, within 2 minutes they ask me, well, how do you treat it?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, how do you?
Well, I mean, I don't really know. But I have a theory that I call the perturbation theory of cancer, about how it is. Cancer can go away spontaneously. It's been known for at least 2,000 years. Cancer's been documented, but it's relatively rare until the Industrial Revolution. Now it's just accelerating, and because of all the extra carcinogens. But what we've known all along, even all the way back to the Egyptian times, that people can have cancer and then all of a sudden it goes away spontaneously. It doesn't happen that often, but it does, and it still happens. And it gets recorded almost every year of people who have cancer, and there's several things about the spontaneous remission. When it happens very, very fast, and it can come back. And when I was looking into the spontaneous remission, then in my book I go into it. I came across this guy named Polly. I forget his first name, but it's in my book, and he developed what was now called Coley's toxin. around the early part of the 20th century. He had one of his patients died of a sarcoma, and he was a brand new doctor, and that really disturbed him. His early patient, died of a sarcoma, and he found out that there was this other fellow who had a sarcoma in the same hospital in New York, and he survived. They did numerous surgeries to remove his sarcoma, and they didn't work. But one day, he got a really high spiking fever, really high, 100, 203 degrees Fahrenheit, and his cancer went away. It went away, and it goes away virtually completely and very, very rapidly. And Coley tracked this guy down, and he found after some years the guy was still alive. He had the scars from the surgery where they removed it, but he was still alive. And he recognized that it happened right after that high spiking fever. And other people have been documented throughout history that fever is preceding fever, a high spiking fever eliminated cancers. And some of the physicians, when they had, this happened in the days before they had the operating rooms sterile, or as much sterile as they could. And one of the guys, I can't remember his name now, these surgeons, said, maybe we should go back to the days when we didn't have so much sterile operating rooms so that people could get fever and the cancer goes away. Anyway, Coley he came up with 2 bacteria they put in there. And to this day, Coley's remedy for cancer, they're not 100%, but he has, to this day, the best cure rate documented. And his daughter wrote a book about this and got the records from other people using his method around the world and wrote a book about it. Unfortunately, I don't remember the name of that book, but it's in my book. And they still use this method in Mexico and in Germany. And you can use, they can use hyperthermia, where they put people in these hot boxes, They do that in Europe and Mexico and other places. And probably, the Indians and the people in Scandinavia, they had those sweat lodges or whatever, I forget what they call them. Those are probably beneficial. They probably, any little cancer, who knows, probably helped you in lots of ways, And I talked to some people recently about that and said maybe that was help prevent cancer.
So what about in my day when we used to go to measles parties because we were told, measles is good, it's mild childhood illness and prevents you from getting cancer. That used to be the talk then.
I think it's very likely. In fact, not only that, I think those things just built you up. I didn't have any of those vaccines. I'm old enough, I had measles, mumps, chicken pox. Just like all kids did at my age in those days, and we all did. In fact, we looked forward to it. We didn't have to go to school,
that's correct.
Until we got out, And I think it builds you up. I mean, it's like exercise. It's like exercise. When you're first born, you don't have much of an immune system. You have your mother's, and it protects you for a while if you breastfed, and then you have to go through these things, and like your muscles, like anything else, you have to exercise them. And so I had. So I didn't have those. I had the polio vaccine, I think I had the injection. I don't think I had the sugar cube thing because it was back in the 50s. And
I had the sugar cube.
You had the sugar cube, all right. And but none of the other stuff.
Now look, you speak so well on this. Is there anything else you want to say? I want you to tell people where they can follow you again. Right. And I would like you to be our expert on turbo cancer for Good Morning CHD. So I'm going to put you in contact with our producers.
Okay, great.
And thank you for your knowledge and amazingness. So where, again, can people follow you? And spell your name, please.
Yeah, David, D-A-V-I-D, Rasnick, RASNICK.com.
And any last words?
I have my email. You can contact me via email. I have, to the left of my photograph on my website, there's a little envelope. Click on it. That's my email address. Terry frowns at me whenever I give out my email.
Yeah, don't give anything out live. Okay, thank you so much for your knowledge, your wisdom, for all you do, and we hope to see a lot more of you at Children's Health Defence.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, bye.